another in a series of presidential profiles. William Henry Harrison, 9th President of the United States.
It is my fervent hope that the white man and red man can live together in harmony, in peace. And I implore my Indian brethren, aim your arrows at the buffalo, the bear, and the deer, but spare your fellow man. Let us live in peace with each other.
He earnestly worked to maintain peace with the Indian tribes that roamed the frontier. Yet it was in military conflict with these same Indians that William Henry Harrison was to achieve his place in history. Harrison was born of a wealthy Virginia family. His father was a signer of the Declaration of Independence. Young William seemed headed for a medical career when he entered the University of Pennsylvania. But 4 months later, he left school and enlisted in the Army, serving under General Mad Anthony Wayne in the Indian War of 1794. 4 years later, Harrison was appointed Secretary of the Northwest Territory, an expanding frontier region that was threatened by Indian raiding parties.
Bands of Indians have long infested this country, the most daring, mischievous people in existence. They are in the daily habit of committing every species of aggression, excepting murder. And should they begin with this, I know of no other way of managing them than hunting them down like wild beasts.
For 12 years, under Presidents Jefferson and Madison, Harrison governed the territory. Although he faithfully followed the national policy of appropriating Indian lands, Harrison was considered capable, just, and patient in his dealings with the tribes. The country was hungry for the Indian hunting grounds, but Harrison tried to take the land from America's red-skinned children with a peace pipe, not a gun.
My children, the great tree of peace I have watered and cultivated with the greatest care, and I have cherished the hope that this tree would spread its branches, and that the white and red people would smoke the pipe of friendship under its shade till the end of time.
But the embers of the peace pipe were dying out as the Indian tribes became increasingly hostile toward their white fathers. Within 14 years, the tribes had lost more than 50 million acres of land. And two warriors rose to unite their people. One was the great chief Tecumseh, the other his brother, the prophet. Tecumseh was a realist, a warrior, and a politician with a single aim: to drive the Americans out of the land northwest of Ohio. The prophet was more emotional. He relied on religious chants and signs from heaven to incite the braves into action.
The Indian villages under the influence of the prophet are engaged in what they term religious duties, but their prayers are always intermixed with warlike sports, shooting the bow, throwing the tomahawk, or wielding the war club. This combination of religious and warlike exercise sufficiently indicates the designs of the prophet.
In 1811, Harrison marched with 900 men toward the prophet's village. Suddenly, before dawn, while Harrison's small army lay encamped on the Tippecanoe River, the Indians attacked. General Harrison responded with a fierce cavalry charge that overran the Indian force and killed the prophet.
Sir, could you give us some account of the battle?
Shortly after dawn, the troops under my command engaged in battle with the whole of the prophet's forces. Their final retreat, leaving a number of warriors dead on the field, and their abandonment of Tippecanoe, attest for us a complete and decisive victory. It has, however, been dearly purchased. A number of brave and valuable men have fallen victims to their zeal for their country's service.
The Battle of Tippecanoe did not end the Indian threat, for the tribes rallied around Tecumseh to terrorize the frontier during the War of 1812. But the echo of his victory would stay with Harrison for the rest of his life and carry him into the White House 30 years later on the cry of Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Freedom on the high seas had long been a burning issue between the United States and Great Britain, reaching a climax in the War of 1812. The British immediately enlisted the aid of the Indians to fight along the Canadian border. General William Harrison pleaded with Tecumseh to forsake the King of England and join forces with the great spirit of America, President Madison.
My children, it has been a long time since you called the King of Great Britain father. He led you into danger and then abandoned you. This was the conduct of the man who called himself your father. The Great Spirit opened your eyes. You heard the voice of the chief of the 17 states speaking the words of peace. But the voice of your deceiver is again heard. And forgetful of your former sufferings, you are listening to him.
But the Indians had suffered too long at the hands of the Great Spirit, and raiding parties fanned out like forest fires along the northwest border. In October of 1813, Harrison achieved his most notable victory, defeating the combined British and Indian forces. Tecumseh was killed, and the Indian threat forever ended in the Northwest. Harrison was a national hero and was elected to Congress following the war. Determined to prevent a recurrence of America's military position in the War of 1812, when the nation was totally unprepared, Harrison advocated universal military training, a standing civilian army.
The whole secret of military glory will be found in the military education of the youth of our nation, with such training to be a branch of education in every school in these United States. Only in this way can we achieve our ideal. Every citizen a soldier.
Slowly, however, William Henry Harrison faded into political oblivion. He served briefly as minister to Colombia, but was recalled when he insulted Simon Bolivar, liberator of South America. Through these lean years, Harrison raised his voice infrequently, as when he defended the right of each state to determine for itself the question of slavery. One state could not dictate to another.
The attempts of those citizens of one state to control the domestic institutions of another can only result in feelings of distrust and jealousy, the certain harbingers of disunion, violence, and civil war, and the ultimate destruction of our free institutions.
But the people still remembered Tippecanoe, and the Whig Party under Henry Clay and Daniel Webster needed a national hero. They chose Harrison as their presidential candidate in 1840.
With feelings of the deepest gratitude, I have read the resolution nominating me as a candidate for the presidency of the United States. I would attempt to describe my sense of obligation if I were not convinced that any language which I could command would fall far short of what I really feel.
Although he was from an aristocratic background, the Whigs promoted Harrison as a cider-drinking, log cabin man of the people. Campaign songs and slogans filled the air. Log cabin rallies sprang up overnight. Hard cider flowed freely. A giant ball of paper was rolled through the countryside, inscribed with the slogan, "Keep the ball rolling to Washington." The ballyhoo paid off, and Harrison was elected president in a landslide. The Whigs were jubilant, confident that Harrison would follow their policies to the letter. Harrison's inaugural address, delivered in a cold, driving rain, outlined his belief in the limited powers of the presidency.
I cannot conceive that any provisions of the Constitution would be found to grant the President a part of the legislative power. And it is preposterous to suppose that the President, placed at the Capitol in Washington, could understand the wants and wishes of the people better than their own immediate representatives who spend a part of every year among them.
The 68-year-old Harrison gave that inaugural address, the longest in history, without even wearing a topcoat to protect himself from the rainy weather. 4 weeks later, William Henry Harrison was dead from pneumonia. He was the first president to die in office, and with him died the Whig program. In death, the hero of Tippecanoe had somehow won a final victory.
Fellow citizens, perhaps this may be the last time I may have the pleasure of speaking to you on earth or seeing you. I will bid you farewell. If forever, fare thee well.